After my miscarriage, my MIL accused me of ruining everything. Then at a family lunch, my SGL announced her pregnancy and said she'd name her baby after my daughter, using the exact name we had chosen. Losing our baby was the most gut-wrenching pain I've ever known. But what came next? What my husband's family did. It was an act of cruelty so calculated, so utterly devoid of empathy. It still sends shivers down my spine. My husband and I had been dreaming of becoming parents for years, facing heartbreak after heartbreak. Then, just a few months ago, our world finally lit up. Those two pink lines appeared on the test, and honestly, we were completely overwhelmed. Pure, unadulterated joy, a flood of hope, and just so incredibly thankful that our time had finally come. It felt like a dream, like all our patience and all our tears had led us to this beautiful, perfect moment. I was so careful, doing everything right, picturing our life as a family of three. But then, one terrifying night, everything changed. I woke up to find I was bleeding. The second I saw it, this cold, heavy fear just sank into my stomach. Even before I nudged my husband awake, even before we rushed to the hospital, I just knew. Something was terribly wrong. When the doctors finally confirmed my worst nightmare, my entire world just shattered. I broke down right there, the sobs racking my body, unable to hold anything in. My husband, who'd been trying so hard to be strong for me, couldn't either. We just wept, together, mourning the tiny life we had been so excited to welcome. Just like that, in the span of one horrifying night, our dreams were ripped away. It felt cruel, like the universe had dangled happiness right in front of us, only to snatch it away before we even had the chance to truly hold it. Honestly, processing that grief has been the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Every single day feels like a battle between accepting what happened and still wishing, somehow, I could change it. And what made it even more agonizing was having to tell our families. My parents? They've been absolute angels, constantly checking in, making sure I'm eating, resting, just not drowning. Their whole focus was on me, on my healing, both physically and emotionally. But my in-laws? Their reactions were different. Instead of thinking about what we were going through, their first thought was about the grandchild they weren't getting. They didn't ask how I was feeling or if I needed anything. Instead, my mother-in-law's first words to me were laced with pure disappointment, not an ounce of sympathy. She looked at me and said she couldn't believe I had lost the baby, like it was something I'd just misplaced. She went on and on about how much she'd been looking forward to meeting her first grandchild, and worst of all, she implied I had messed it up. I was already drowning in grief, already blaming myself, even though I knew deep down it wasn't my fault. But hearing those words, so cold and utterly lacking in empathy, felt like a knife twisting in an open wound. My husband didn't hesitate. He called his mother out immediately. He was absolutely furious. He made it crystal clear she had no right to speak to me like that, especially when I was already suffering so much. I could tell he was holding back so much anger, trying to stay respectful, but also making sure she understood that what she said was completely unacceptable. In response, my mother-in-law gave me one of those half-hearted apologies. You know the kind? She said she hadn't really thought so much before speaking, as if that somehow excused her cruel words. Then she told us not to take it personally, as if blaming me for something I had absolutely no control over wasn't deeply personal. Her words stung, and while I appreciated my husband standing up for me, I knew deep down she wasn't truly sorry. She just wanted to smooth things over so the conversation could move on. And if that wasn't frustrating enough, my sister-in-law's reaction to our loss was just bizarre. She never once checked in on me, never called to see how we were doing. All she sent my husband was a single crying emoji. That was it. No words, no acknowledgement of our pain, just an emoji. It felt so cold, so distant, like she didn't know what to say, but also didn't care enough to try. Then, out of nowhere, this past week, she called, invited us to lunch at her place. She told us other family members would be there too, and insisted we absolutely had to come. My husband and I had been avoiding family events. Honestly, it was just too hard to be around everyone. But my sister-in-law wouldn't take no for an answer. She kept insisting we had to come, saying it was absolutely necessary because she had a very important announcement to make. So, despite how emotionally drained and broken we've been feeling, we decided to go. We thought maybe, just maybe, Being around family for a little while would be a nice change, something to help lift the heavy cloud that had been hanging over us. But that turned out to be a huge mistake. The lunch started normally enough. We made small talk, tried our best to blend in, and kept to ourselves as much as possible. But then, out of nowhere, my sister-in-law stood up, cleared her throat, and with a huge, beaming smile on her face, she made her announcement. She was pregnant. The whole room erupted. Gasps, excitement, people clapping, cheering, rushing to congratulate her. Her boyfriend beamed proudly beside her. It was like a scene out of a movie, except instead of feeling happiness, I felt like the air had been sucked right out of my lungs. Then she looked around at everyone and explained that she and her boyfriend had just found out earlier this week. She said that after speaking to her gynecologist, they decided to share the news with the family because they thought it would be a positive announcement after everything we had been going through. And then she turned to look directly at me and nodded. I froze. My mind went blank. I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me, their polite smiles and forced sympathetic glances, as if they were all waiting for my reaction. The nods of pity, the awkward silence in my direction. It was humiliating. I sat there, stunned, unable to process what had just happened. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that my own sister-in-law had just used my pain as a stepping stone for her moment of joy. She could have announced it any time, anyway. But instead, she chose to frame her pregnancy as some kind of gift to our grieving hearts. As if her happiness was supposed to magically erase our sorrow. As if we should be grateful for this announcement. It was beyond cruel. It was humiliating. And in that moment, all I wanted to do was disappear. Seeing my expression, my sister-in-law quickly added, "No offense to you," as if those two little words meant I shouldn't feel hurt or humiliated. But how could I not? She had just put me in the most uncomfortable, painful situation, turning my grief into a backdrop for her joy. Before I could even process it, my mother-in-law jumped up from her seat, completely ignoring me as if I wasn't even in the room. She rushed over to my sister-in-law, wrapping her in a tight hug, beaming with excitement. Finally, she gushed, "My dream of having a grandchild is coming true." Hearing those words felt like a dagger straight to my heart. I had been pregnant, too. For a short, beautiful moment, I had been carrying a life inside me. I had thought I would be the one to give her that first grandchild. But that dream had been cruelly taken away. And now, hearing her say those words as if my pregnancy never even existed, as if it didn't matter at all. God, it hurt. I turned to look at my husband, and I could see it in his face, too. The sadness, the frustration, the anger he was trying so hard to suppress. He reached for my hand under the table, giving it a comforting squeeze. And in that small gesture, I knew he felt just as awful as I did. We both stayed silent. We didn't say a word. Of course, I could have spoken up. I could have called my sister-in-law out for talking about our miscarriage so openly like that. Let her and my mother-in-law know how cruel and inconsiderate they were being. But I didn't. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't want to take away from her moment. This was her pregnancy announcement. And no matter how hurt I was, I didn't want to be the reason the focus shifted. So I swallowed my pain. I sat there in silence, listening to their cheers, their congratulations, their excitement, as if my loss had never happened. Everyone was completely focused on my sister-in-law, showering her with attention and praise. My mother-in-law was practically glowing, and my sister-in-law and her boyfriend were basking in it, clearly enjoying being the center of it all. My sister-in-law kept going on and on about how happy she was, how this was her lifelong dream, how she had spent her whole life preparing to become a mother. And then she said something that completely floored me. With a bright smile, she announced, "I've already thought about what I want to name my baby. If it's a girl, I'll name her Mika. And if it's a boy, I'll name him Michael." She paused, looking around the room dramatically before adding, "Of course, this is in honor of my brother's late child. It's a tribute to them." The room went silent for a brief second before people started nodding, murmuring things like, "Oh, how thoughtful, and that's so sweet of you." But me and my husband? We didn't feel the same way. Not at all. For context, my husband and I were supposed to name our daughter Mika. We had spent so much time talking about it, imagining what she would be like, picturing the day we would finally hold her in our arms and call her by name. It was our name. The name of the daughter we had desperately longed for. The child we had prayed for. The baby we lost. But now, my sister-in-law had decided to name her unborn child after my baby. The one I lost. The one I was still mourning. The one she had never even acknowledged before this moment. And she was acting like it was some kind of gift to us. As if this was something we should be grateful for. I felt sick. I felt angry. This wasn't a tribute. This wasn't kindness. This was her twisting our pain into something that made her look good. Something that turned our grief into her story. And the worst part was that no one else seemed to see the problem with it. My husband, still gripping my hand, turned to his sister and firmly asked, "Why would you do something like this?" His voice was calm, but I could hear the strain behind it, the frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. Without missing a beat, my sister-in-law responded that she wanted to make sure everyone remembers our daughter, the one we had lost. She claimed that by naming her own child Mika or Michael, she was keeping our baby's memory alive. She also added that she loved the name and that since we weren't going to be using that name anymore, she felt it was okay to take it for herself. My mother-in-law added that she supported my sister-in-law's decision and that it was a very sweet thing to do. I felt my breath hitch. My eyes stung with tears. How could they be this cruel? At that moment, I couldn't take it anymore. My chest felt tight. My hands were trembling. And I knew if I stayed there any longer, I would completely break down in front of everyone. So, I quickly excused myself, mumbling something about needing a moment, and rushed to the washroom before anyone could stop me. The second I shut the door behind me, the tears spilled over. I covered my mouth with my hands, trying to stifle my sobs, trying to steady my breathing, but it was useless. The pain was too overwhelming. I knew that technically, my sister-in-law could name her child whatever she wanted. No one could stop her from choosing any name she liked. But that wasn't the point. The point was that she had chosen to take our name, our daughter's name, and acted like she was doing us some kind of favor. She never asked us how we felt about it. Instead, she blindsided us, announcing it in front of the entire family, making it sound like some grand, heartfelt tribute when in reality, it just felt like another way for her to center herself in our tragedy. How could she not see how painful this was for us? How could she not understand that this wasn't an honor? It was a reminder, a constant reminder of what we had lost, of what we would never get to have. However, not even a moment later, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law started banging on my door loudly, asking me why I had rushed off and claiming I was making a scene. I wiped my face as best as I could, took a deep breath, and hesitantly opened the door. Even though I was still shaking inside, I tried to keep my voice calm. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to make things worse, so I softly apologized and explained that I just needed a little time to myself. But my sister-in-law wasn't having it. She folded her arms, narrowed her eyes at me, and then with a completely straight face asked, "Why? Aren't you happy that the name you chose for your daughter is finally going to come to some use now?" And that was it. That was the moment I snapped. I looked her dead in the eyes, my voice shaking with anger and hurt, and I told her, "You have no right to use my daughter's name. No right at all. My husband and I just lost her. Do you have any idea how much pain we are still in?" I could feel the tears welling up again, but I didn't stop. That name is not up for grabs. That name belongs to our child, and it is in use because for me, my daughter is still alive in my heart and in my memories. Just because you think I can't hold her in my arms doesn't mean she doesn't exist. The air around us felt thick, heavy. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law just stood there blinking, as if they hadn't expected me to fight back, as if they thought I would just roll over and accept this. But I wasn't going to. I couldn't, because my daughter mattered, and I refused to let them act like she didn't. I told my sister-in-law that she needed to be more understanding of what my husband and I were going through and how painful it was for us when she used our late daughter's name for her baby right in front of us. I asked her to choose a different name. But instead of listening, instead of even considering my feelings, she crossed her arms and scoffed. "You're being overdramatic," she said. "You're seriously making such a big deal over a name. You're so stuck up." And of course, my mother-in-law, who had done nothing but invalidate me since the moment I lost my baby, jumped in to back her up. "I think you should appreciate what my daughter is doing for you and her brother," she said, her tone condescending, as if I was a child throwing a tantrum instead of a grieving mother trying to protect her daughter's memory. "And honestly, you need to stop making the grief of losing your daughter your entire personality," she added. Hearing that, I felt like I had been slapped. My entire personality? Was that really how she saw me? Did she really think I enjoyed feeling like this? That I wanted to be drowning in this grief every single day? I wasn't choosing to be broken. I was broken. Instead of supporting me, instead of even pretending to care, they were treating me like I was the problem. Like I was the one making things difficult. Thankfully, my husband had heard everything. So had the rest of the guests. And before I could even say another word, he was already at my side, stepping in between me and his family like a shield. His voice was firm, unwavering. "Back off," he told them, his eyes dark with anger. I could feel the tension radiating off of him. He was barely holding himself together, just like me. He turned to his sister, his voice thick with emotion. "I really, really hope you never have to go through what we went through. I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anyone, not even you. Because if you ever lost your child the way we lost ours, you'd finally understand just how cruel you're being right now." The room fell silent. My sister-in-law's smug expression faltered for just a second. Then my husband turned to his mother, his hands clenched at his sides. "And you? Don't you dare tell my wife that she should be grateful for this. What exactly should we be grateful for? That my sister took our daughter's name without even speaking to us first? That she sprung it on us in front of everyone like it was some kind of grand gesture when it was actually just deeply hurtful?" No one spoke. No one even moved. It was as if the entire room was holding its breath. "You both keep acting like this is some kind of tribute, like this is something for us," my husband continued, his voice shaking with restrained fury. "But it's not. My sister decided this all on her own without caring about how he felt. And now you're telling my wife that she should be grateful, that she should just accept it? No, that's not happening." I had never felt more grateful for my husband than I did in that moment. He wasn't just standing up for me. He was standing up for our daughter, too. For the love we had for her. For the pain we were carrying every single day. He turned back to me then, his face softening just a little. He reached for my hand and held it tightly as if to say that he had my back. He simply turned to the rest of the family and let them all know loud and clear that we were leaving. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law kept arguing, their voices rising as they tried to justify themselves. At that point, my father-in-law, looking overwhelmed, tried to step in and calm everyone down, but it was no use. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were too deep in their own self-righteousness to even consider that they might have been in the wrong. Without another word, my husband took my hand and led me out of there. I didn't even realize how tightly I had been holding my breath until we finally stepped outside into the fresh air. But the moment I got into the car, the moment I felt safe enough to let go, everything came crashing down. I broke. I covered my face with my hands as the sobs racked through me, my whole body shaking with grief, anger, exhaustion, everything I had been holding in all day. My husband didn't say anything. He just reached over, held my hand, and let me cry. Since that day, we've kept our distance from his family. My husband and I have been spending a lot of time together, just the two of us, leaning on each other, trying to heal in our own way. We haven't responded to my mother-in-law or sister-in-law. We've been ignoring them because, honestly, there's nothing left to say. The only one who has reached out is my father-in-law. He called my husband and me privately and actually apologized for everything. He told us he was sorry for the way things unfolded, for how insensitive my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had been. I could tell my husband appreciated it, but at the same time, it didn't erase what had already happened. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have been going around telling everyone that my husband should leave me, that I'm not a real woman because I lost my baby, that everything that happened is somehow my fault. I wish I could say I was shocked, but honestly, after everything they've done, I don't even have the energy to be surprised anymore. I'm just disgusted. They actually expect me to apologize. Here's the thing, it's been really difficult, and hearing from so many people who understand and validate our feelings has been incredibly comforting. I need to make it clear, my husband has been 100% on my side from the very beginning. He was just as hurt and angry as I was. We've been leaning on each other through this, and I am so grateful to have him. My father-in-law did sound genuinely upset, but he still stood by and let his wife and daughter treat me this way. So, I need time before I can even think about forgiving that. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law are still spreading lies about me. This isn't the first time they've been dramatic or self-centered, but this time, they've taken it to a whole other level. It's almost as if they enjoy making me feel this way. And honestly, it's exhausting. I'm already carrying so much grief, so much heartbreak, and instead of showing me the slightest bit of kindness, they're using this moment when I'm at my most vulnerable to tear me down even further. Losing my baby was the most devastating thing I have ever gone through. And no matter how hard I try to put on a brave face, the truth is, I am struggling. My confidence is shaken. My heart is broken. I feel lost in ways I never imagined. And I think my mother-in-law and sister-in-law know that. They see my pain and have chosen to exploit it. Thankfully, my husband has told anyone who reached out that if they want to believe my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's side of the story and support them, then they could consider themselves cut off, too. We do not want to engage with them either. Right now, our focus is on healing and protecting our peace. And if that means cutting out toxic people, then so be it. It's been a week since then, and my sister-in-law finally admitted, over text, that naming her baby after mine was never about honoring my daughter, just as I had always suspected. It all came out when I reached out to ask her to stop spreading lies about me and to just grow up. We got into an argument, and that's when she finally revealed her true intentions. It was never about keeping our daughter's memory alive or doing something sweet for us like she initially tried to pretend. No, she told me, in her own words, that her real reason for doing it was because of her own jealousy and desperation. My sister-in-law admitted that ever since I got pregnant, she had felt envious and insecure because she had always wanted to be the one to bring the first grandchild into the family. She saw my pregnancy as some sort of challenge, like a competition she had to win, and she couldn't stand the fact that I was getting attention for something she hadn't yet experienced herself. And then, when I lost my baby, she saw it as an opportunity in the most disgusting, heartless way possible. She admitted to me that she saw my miscarriage as a way to one-up me. She wanted to prove that she was better than me, that she was the one who would get the family's love and excitement for having a baby, not me. So, the name wasn't a tribute. It was a power move. It was her way of taking something from me, of proving that she was the better one, and that I meant nothing in comparison to her. I cannot even put into words how disgusted I felt reading her texts. I knew she was selfish. I knew she lacked empathy. But to admit something like this, to put it in writing with no shame, no remorse, it's beyond anything I could have imagined. I used to think that maybe, just maybe, she was just ignorant, just clueless about how much she was hurting me. But now I know the truth. She wanted to hurt me. She wanted to make me feel small. And that is something I will never, ever forgive. So here we are. My husband and I have finally made the decision to permanently cut off my mother-in-law and sister-in-law from our lives. But before doing that, we decided that the truth needed to be revealed. For too long, they've been twisting the narrative, playing the victim, spreading lies about me, and acting like I'm causing unnecessary drama when in reality, they are the ones who have been relentlessly bullying me during the worst period of my life. After what my sister-in-law admitted, my husband decided that we needed to expose them and make everyone see the truth. So he took screenshots of all the vile, heartless messages my sister-in-law had sent me. The ones where she admitted that naming her baby after our daughter was never about honoring her, but about one-upping me. The ones where she openly stated that she wanted to put me in my place, where she mocked my miscarriage, and where she gloated about being the one to bring the first grandchild into the family. And then he sent them to the family group chat. He also wrote a detailed message explaining everything, laying it all out. How my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had been tormenting me ever since we lost our baby, and how they had gone so far as to call me not a real woman behind my back. How they had been bullying me for something that was already breaking me apart inside. Suffice it to say, people were horrified, absolutely disgusted, especially the women in the family. Many of them are mothers themselves, and when they saw those messages, they couldn't believe how heartless and malicious my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had been toward me. Several of them immediately started calling my sister-in-law and mother-in-law out, asking them how they could be so cruel, how they could justify treating me like this, and why they would ever think something like this was okay. My sister-in-law, of course, tried to frantically defend herself, claiming that we were twisting her words and that it wasn't that serious. But the messages spoke for themselves. There was no twisting anything. Her own words condemned her. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, tried to go with her usual tactic of acting like she didn't mean any harm. She claimed that she was just excited about her grandchild, and that we were being unfair to my sister-in-law. But nobody is buying it anymore. After exposing them, my husband and I decided to block my mother-in-law and sister-in-law permanently. We are officially done with them. Ever since this fiasco, most of the family has distanced themselves from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law after seeing the truth. They still have a few flying monkeys defending them, but we don't care. We are no longer part of their toxic mess. And honestly, it feels like we can finally breathe again.